I'm Addison, 38 years old, living in a small town near Spokane, Washington. 2 weeks ago, I underwent major abdominal surgery. The incisions still hadn't fully healed, and every movement felt like someone was dragging nails through my skin. These days, just reaching for the TV remote was enough to make me break into a sweat from the pain. I was lying sideways on the couch, one hand resting lightly over the bandages around my stomach, trying to steady my breath, when the door swung open. Ethan, my husband, walked in, eyes glued to his phone. He didn't even glance at my pained expression. Mom just called. They decided to have Christmas at our place this year. He said it casually, like announcing the weather. I sat up with effort, a burning stretch pulling along my back. What? I can't even walk properly yet. They really want to come here? Ethan shrugged. Mom said she'll take care of decorations. You just need to handle dinner and host. It's not that much. I had surgery 2 weeks ago. The doctor said no standing for long periods, no lifting anything heavy. Addie, don't be dramatic, it's just cooking. My mom still does it and she's got arthritis in both knees. I clenched my hand into a loose fist to stay calm. In that moment it hit me. No one in his family really cared what I was going through. No one asked how I felt. They only needed me in the kitchen, like every other year. My phone started ringing. The screen lit up with Linda's name. My mother-in-law. Ethan glanced over, then tossed the phone toward me without looking. I answered. Addison, good, you picked up. This year let's do turkey with mashed potatoes, okay? Oh, and don't forget the mini cheesecakes everyone loves. Carly's been talking about them since the start of the month. Her voice was syrupy sweet, so fake it made my skin crawl. I kept my voice steady. I'm not sure I can cook that much this year, Mom. I just had abdominal surgery. Oh, stop making it so dramatic. It's Christmas. Just do what makes everyone happy. Her tinkling laugh over the line made my stomach tighten. I'll bring the fine china. You just focus on the food and setting the table properly. Use cloth napkins this time, not paper like you did at Thanksgiving. I didn't respond. Linda had already hung up. She didn't need my agreement. I sat there, staring at the cold kitchen, thinking back to last Christmas, when I had a high fever but still managed to cook 4 main dishes because tradition is tradition. I remembered Ethan's birthday in April. I had digestive issues so bad I needed an IV, but still made him a cake because his mother said, "A daughter-in-law who can't prepare a proper meal doesn't deserve respect in this family." My phone buzzed with a message. It was from Carly, Ethan's sister. Mom says you're in charge of Christmas. Don't mess it up again, okay? I stared at the screen. Something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, final crack. I shuffled into the bathroom. The pale yellow light reflected my face in the mirror. Pale, gaunt, but something in me held steady for once. No longer completely defeated. I gently touched the stitched-up area on my abdomen. The dull pain reminded me of everything I'd endured for what they called family. And I knew this Christmas wouldn't be like the ones before. The next morning, as I took careful steps around the house for recovery, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and half a piece of toast. He didn't ask how I was feeling or whether I'd slept okay, as if I were just another appliance in the house, like the coffee maker, the fridge, or the old sofa he once said he'd replace. Mom wants to know what you're planning to cook for the 25th, Ethan said, eyes still fixed on his phone. I turned my face away from the bright sunlight coming through the window. I can't even slice an apple right now, Ethan. How do you expect me to roast a turkey or prepare an entire meal? He sighed and set the cup down hard enough to spill a little. I know you're tired, but this is important. The whole family's counting on you. Mom already said, just put in a little effort. I bit my lip. A little effort? Like last Thanksgiving when I stood for 6 hours with a migraine? Or your mom's birthday when I had a fever but still made 3 kinds of cake? Ethan didn't answer. He just looked at me, then muttered with a tone colder than before. My mom is 65 and still handles everything. You're 38, don't keep using surgery as an excuse. I turned away. My heart didn't race from anger, but from the weight of realizing the man who once held my hand at the altar no longer saw me at all. My phone buzzed again, a text from Carly. Mom says you're just being lazy, acting all weak. Do it properly this time. You burned the cake last year. Before I could lock the screen, it rang. Linda. I hesitated, then picked up. Addison, don't mess things up like last year. Grandma's coming, and she can't handle anything spicy. For desserts, cut the sugar. Carly's dieting. And oh, make sure the table's done with white flowers, red ones look cheap. I gripped the phone tighter. Mom, I don't know if I can do all this. Come on, I'm not asking for the moon. Just the same as always, don't make us look bad in front of the relatives. She hung up before I could say another word. I stood there in the cold kitchen, hearing my own voice echo inside my head. Am I even a person here? Or just their default holiday chef? The doorbell rang. I opened it slowly. Carly, 27, with her perfect curls and bright red nails, stood holding 2 gift bags and a printed list. Here's the menu everyone agreed on, she said, handing me the paper without even making eye contact. Oh, and be sure the mushroom soup uses organic mushrooms. As for the tart, make the crust crisp this time, not that soggy mess from 2021. I took the paper but felt nothing, just a numb exhaustion. Carly nudged past me, opened the fridge without asking, and poked through the shelves. Mom said to check if you've started anything. We're all busy, so don't go scrambling at the last minute again like last year. I said nothing, just walked back to my room, closed the door, and sat on the bed. The dull ache in my stomach had crept higher, right to the center of my chest. After she left, I got a message from Kelsey, Ethan's 8th grade niece. Glued to TikTok most days. Mom says Christmas will suck again because Aunt Addie can't cook anything decent. Don't starve us, okay? I dropped the phone onto the bed, then looked up at the ceiling. They didn't see me as family. I was just a name attached to obligations. A machine, a kitchen, a default setting they'd never thought to question. I reached for an old notebook from the drawer, flipped to the first page and started writing. Not a shopping list, but a plan to leave. Day I began saving myself, December 15th. I called Harper, my best friend from college, the one who once told me, Someday, Addison, if you ever need to disappear from the world for a bit, just call me. Harper lives alone in a small wooden cabin by Lake Panore. She works remotely and grows vegetables in her greenhouse. It's another world, quiet, and no one calls you lazy just because you're recovering from major surgery. She picked up after 3 rings. Addison, oh my God, are you okay? You sound completely out of breath. I took a deep inhale. Is that escape offer still good? I'm folding blankets already, just tell me what you need. I looked around the empty kitchen. A cabin, 2 days of silence, and maybe a little dose of petty revenge. Harper burst out laughing. Now that's the Addison I know. All right, let's hear it. I told her everything, from Linda's condescending orders, Carly and Kelsey's smug messages, to the way Ethan stared past me every single morning. Harper sighed. Sounds like it's time to turn their Christmas dinner into one they'll never forget. Together we built a plan. Quiet, precise, but with the potential to shake a household like an avalanche in mid-December. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I pulled out the laptop I'd hidden in the bottom drawer, the one he rarely touched, and began my search. Restaurants in Sandpoint delivering on December 25th. An Indian place known for spicy sweet curry. A popular Thai spot with rich pad see. A Chinese restaurant that did house calls with advance orders. I picked up the phone. Hi, I'd like to place a large order for delivery on Christmas Day at 1 p.m. Payment in advance, big tip. They confirmed without hesitation. I used Ethan's credit card, the same one he once used to buy a Bluetooth speaker while I was still in the hospital. 3 days later, as gift boxes from Linda and Carly started trickling in, I began decorating for the revenge feast. No wreaths, no Christmas tree. Instead, I printed out every takeout menu, folded and laminated them, and taped them neatly along the dining room walls. In between, I placed screenshots of their messages. If you cook like last year again, we're ordering pizza. Don't use paper napkins again, Mom was furious. If you're well enough to binge Netflix, you can cook too, right? I didn't add a single comment. Their own words were the perfect display. I opened the voice recorder app and documented every call. Stop being dramatic. What kind of illness keeps someone down this long? My mom still bakes every year with back pain. I stored everything neatly in a folder on my computer labeled Silent Night, Savage Proofs. That evening, while Ethan worked late, I laminated the last of the menus and pinned them to glass frames along the dining room walls. Instead of family photos, we had dim sum, chicken korma, and tom yum soup. On the night of December 22nd, Harper emailed me a confirmation. The cabin by the lake is booked from the 24th through the 27th. Fully stocked pantry, on-call nurse, fast Wi-Fi. Just bring yourself. I packed a small bag and hid it in the trunk of Harper's car. Ethan didn't notice. He was too busy texting Linda and Carly about seating charts, table runners, and dinner themes. No one questioned why I hadn't printed a menu. No one asked why the stove hadn't been used all week. They were too busy assuming I'd always obey. Perfect. The more they assumed, the harder the fall. On the morning of December 25th, I woke at 6 a.m., wrapped in a gray wool sweater, and poured myself a cup of herbal tea. The sun barely lit the frosty sky, and the house was so still I could hear my own heartbeat under the fabric. On the dining table was the note I'd printed the night before, placed carefully in the center of a small wreath made of dried eucalyptus. Merry Christmas. All meals have been prepaid. Complaints may be directed to my surgeon, Addison. Next to it I left color-printed receipts from 4 different restaurants: Thai, Indian, Chinese, and a Southern Smile BBQ place. Each one noted clearly, deliver by 1 p.m. at the front door. Beneath every receipt, a handwritten message in slanted script. Since you all love options so much, I made sure you'd have plenty this year. On the walls, laminated menus were displayed like exhibits in a gallery. Between them, screenshots of texts from Carly, Linda, and Kelsey, unedited, unfiltered. No captions needed, they told the story better than I ever could. I looked around, taking in the last Christmas dinner I would ever host as a daughter-in-law. At 8:30 a.m., Harper's car rolled up, horn tapping once. I carried my suitcase out. It was so light I didn't even need both hands. Ethan had left earlier to pick up his grandmother. For the first time in years, the house felt entirely mine, for just a moment. Ready, General? Harper grinned as I slid into the passenger seat. More than ever. We drove out of town, winding past snow-covered hills. Behind me, everything was already set in motion. And this time, I wouldn't be around to clean up after anyone. At 10:58 a.m. through the Ring doorbell app, I saw Linda's familiar SUV pull up to the front gate. Then came Carly's car and Kelsey's minivan with her husband. All 3 stepped out dressed in bright red dresses, high heels, and carrying elaborately wrapped gifts. Addison, Linda shouted from the steps. Open up! Isn't anyone going to greet us? They entered using the keypad code they'd used every year. I watched them file in, Carly calling out, "Why isn't there a smell? The kitchen's cold. Mom, maybe she overslept." But when they stepped into the dining room, they froze, like they'd just walked into a funeral. "What the hell is this?" Carly yelled. Linda read my printed note aloud, her eyes wide. "Merry Christmas, all meals have been prepaid. For complaints, please contact my surgeon. Addison." Kelsey picked up a Chinese food menu, squinting at the Mandarin characters in confusion. "This one's steamed fish. Is anyone even gonna eat that?" All chatter stopped when Ethan walked in, holding a tray of bread rolls he'd picked up on the way. He stopped cold at the sight of the wall, now turned into a display of receipts, menus, and screenshots. "Where's Addison?" he asked, voice low. Linda slammed a receipt on the table. "You should ask your wife. What kind of joke is this?" Carly angrily pulled out her phone. Through the camera I could see her screen show my Facebook post. A picture of the empty kitchen with a simple caption. "This Christmas, I chose rest. Food will arrive at 1 p.m. At 1 o'clock, 4 delivery drivers from 4 different restaurants arrived almost simultaneously. They walked in like catering staff at a private event. Large insulated containers, branded napkins, and even thank you notes from the chefs. Linda, Carly, and Kelsey stood frozen, staring as each box was carefully placed on the table. Not a single traditional dish, no turkey, no cranberry sauce, and no Addison. Ethan sat in silence, pulled out his phone, and saw the message I'd sent. "Don't come looking for me. I haven't disappeared. I've just finally shown up. Exactly where I belong. Enjoy your meal." Back at the cabin by the lake, I sat on the porch, wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping the hot cocoa Harper had made. The smell of freshly baked cinnamon rolls drifted from the kitchen. "Plug in the fairy lights?" Harper asked. I smiled. No need, it feels bright enough already. Inside the cabin, I sat at the desk, hands resting on my laptop keyboard. Outside, snow fell steadily on the still surface of the lake. In that quiet space, I opened the only folder saved on my desktop, titled, The Truth Behind Christmas. I drafted an email addressed to all those who had turned me into the official family servant for years: Linda, Carly, Kelsey, Ethan, and 2 of his aunts. The subject line was short and direct. Why didn't show up this year? I attached 3 things. First, a photo of my surgical incision, clearly showing stitches nearly a foot long still healing just below my abdomen. Alongside it, a medical report stated, complex abdominal surgery. Patient must refrain from physical labor for at least 6 weeks. Second, a file of hospital bills. Every itemized cost from treatment, anesthesia, tests, medication, and post-op care. The final amount came close to $28,000, part of which I had to pay myself. Third, a file containing collected messages and voice recordings from the past 3 weeks. Each entry was time-stamped and labeled. Included was Linda's cold, cutting voice. If you can't even get this right, then it's a waste our family ever welcomed you in. Then came Carly's sarcasm. You're only 38. Don't act like you just had open-heart surgery, it's just cooking. And Ethan chimed in. My mom has arthritis and still hosts dinners. You could at least try. I didn't respond. I let their words speak for themselves. At the end of the email I wrote, Happy holidays to all. I hope this year everyone is served exactly the way they've treated others. Edison. I hit send. Not 10 minutes later, my phone started vibrating non-stop. I set it down quietly, not bothering to look. Harper walked out of the little kitchen with 2 mugs of hot spiced cider and sat beside me. Storm's rolling in already, she asked, handing me a mug. I nodded slightly. Yeah, but this time I'm not the one standing in the middle of it. By late afternoon, social media was buzzing. Someone who knew both Carly and me had posted a photo of my surgical scar with the caption, She once cooked holiday meals with a fever, carried trays while bleeding post-op. This year she chose to rest, and her in-laws lost their minds. Amazing. Within hours, the post had thousands of shares and comments. So many people were in support. If being a daughter-in-law means being treated like a servant, she had every right to walk away. If a husband compares you to his mom, maybe he should just live with his mom. She cooked every year while falling apart. That's not love. That's exploitation. I read each line. Not with tears, but with a soft, calm smile. That night, I opened my phone. Over 50 missed calls, mostly from Linda and Carly. One message from Linda appeared at the top. Have you lost your mind? Why would you shame the family like this? How are we supposed to face the neighbors now? Ethan texted just before midnight. Eddie, this has gone too far. Come home, we need to talk. I replied with a photo of our kitchen on Christmas Day, walls covered in takeout menus, and a single line. You said it was just cooking, then cook it yourself. I'm finally somewhere that understands recovery needs space. I turned off the phone, set it on the table, and leaned back in my chair. Harper sat quietly beside me, resting her hand on my shoulder. I whispered, almost to myself, I don't have to prove anything to them anymore. And in that quiet winter night, I felt like I was finally living, not just existing, in the role of someone else's helper. I returned home early on January 2nd. The air was still cold, snow piled along the curbs, and the weak winter sun couldn't quite melt the ice I'd carried inside me for years. Ethan was home. He sat motionless on the sofa, still in pajamas, the TV playing to no one. When I opened the door, he startled. Addison. I didn't answer. I simply placed my bag on the table, pulled out a folder, and set it neatly in front of him. These are the divorce papers. His face drained of color. Wait, are you serious? I sat down across from the man who had once shared my bed for 8 years. You lost the right to ask that the moment you dismissed my health. Every piece of evidence is there. He lowered his head, voice faltering. I just thought you'd gotten used to it. Exactly. And that's why I won't get used to it ever again. I handed him another sheet, a printout of the now viral post. Over 160,000 shares. Thousands of comments, and video reactions with people holding back tears. Pinned at the top was a comment. This woman didn't just cook. She carried a whole family that never valued her sacrifices. Ethan stayed silent. He didn't ask any more questions. Maybe he finally realized it was all too clear. A few days later, my lawyer met with Ethan to discuss the division of assets. The house was jointly owned, but I had come prepared. Bills in my name, payments I'd made on my own over the years, and detailed bank statements showing our contributions. When my lawyer presented recordings, photos, messages, and hospital receipts, Ethan had no room to argue. He was forced to surrender the majority ownership of the house, along with a small financial settlement, a modest acknowledgement of the burden I carried through my recovery. Meanwhile, on social media, my sister-in-law posted a long rant mocking people who fake weakness to gain sympathy. But within hours, users identified her as the one mentioned in the viral post. Comments flooded in. Isn't this the sister-in-law who made her cook after abdominal surgery? Pretending to be moral while exploiting your own family? Yikes. Addison's in-laws should be ashamed, not defensive. Within 3 days, Carly was forced to delete her Facebook account. The backlash was relentless. An anonymous user even leaked one of her previous messages to me, filled with condescending insults. There was no salvaging her reputation. Linda, my mother-in-law, tried to fight back in her own way. She submitted a letter to the local paper, claiming her family was suffering from unseen emotional wounds. But unfortunately, public opinion wasn't on her side. The article received hundreds of comments pointing out the absurdity. Hurt because they lost their free holiday cook. Instead of being ashamed, she wrote a letter to deflect blame. Classic example of a generation that doesn't know how to apologize. A woman who had worked as a nurse at the hospital where I had surgery spoke up, confirming the seriousness of the procedure. She wrote, "If this patient were my family, I wouldn't let her near a stove for at least 6 weeks. And yet, her in-laws expected her to host a dinner? Unbelievable." After that, Linda went completely silent. A few weeks later, I got a call from Ethan's workplace, a small local media company. They informed me that Ethan had been suspended for violating the company's ethics policy and damaging their reputation through widely circulated personal conduct. The news devastated Ethan, but for me, it wasn't revenge. It was the natural consequence of his choices. He lived for years without considering consequences. I finally let things fall into place. One February afternoon, I walked out of my lawyer's office with finalized divorce papers in hand. I stood in the parking lot, wind sweeping past me, but this time nothing made me shiver. Harper texted me, "Come over for dinner tonight. Bring nothing unless you want to bring that free and easy smile." I looked at the message and laughed. One early spring morning, I moved into a new apartment in North Spokane. A modest, airy space with nothing that once belonged to my ex-husband's family. The kitchen only had the essentials, but I didn't feel like anything was missing. No double oven, no special china cabinet for holiday use, no chalkboard in the middle of the wall that read, "This week's menu by Addison." I walked barefoot across the wooden floor, opened the window, and let in the gentle breeze from the nearby park. Down below, kids were playing soccer and an older woman walked her dog. I stood at the window, holding a cup of coffee, feeling like I was actually living. Not living to serve, not to be a good daughter-in-law, but living for myself. Harper came by that afternoon with a basket of fresh flowers and a small almond cake topped with a green candle. Here's to new beginnings. I hugged her genuinely, and I didn't have to hide tears of relief. We sat on the floor, eating cake between unopened boxes. Harper pointed to a small picture frame I had placed on the table. "Who's that?" "Me, when I was 16, I chuckled. Back then, I swore I'd never let anyone make me feel small, but somewhere between all the dinners, the daughter-in-law titles, and empty thank yous, I forgot. Harper nodded. "What matters is, you remembered, and this time, you're not forgetting again." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My actions had already said enough. A week later, I ran into Carly at the grocery store. She was standing by the bakery aisle fumbling with her shopping list. When she saw me, her eyes blinked a few times before her voice softened. "You look different." I gave a small smile. "Yeah, makes sense. Nobody sees me in the role they once boxed me into anymore." She was quiet for a moment, then murmured, Anyway, I'm sorry. I think I was really careless. I nodded. Carelessness has a price, Carly. I hope you've paid it. In April, I officially launched a small weekend cooking class, not to serve anyone, but to teach other women how to love their kitchens without losing themselves in them. On the first day, 8 women showed up. One of them, a newly divorced woman in her 50s, asked me, "Do you ever regret walking away from it all?" I set the knife down on the cutting board, dried my hands, and looked at her. I didn't walk away from anything. I just stopped carrying what was never mine to hold. The kitchen fell silent for a second, then everyone quietly returned to what they were doing. But I knew my words had landed, just like Harper's once did with me. That evening, as I stood washing dishes under the soft glow of the kitchen light, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "I've signed everything. I hope you live well." I set the phone down without replying. There was no need. I was already living well. Truly well. I was finally the one holding the strings. In June, I returned to the cabin by the lake with Harper. The small house still sat quietly by the water. We brought toasted bread, warm cider, and unfiltered laughter that didn't need a reason. At dusk, I sat on the wooden porch, watching the lake reflect the soft red hue of the sky. I opened my old notebook and flipped to the first page, where I once wrote, "The day I began saving myself, December 15th. Silently, I added a new line just beneath it. And I did it. I used to be the one behind the stove stirring pots while others laughed in front of the TV. I set tables, washed dishes, and pushed through pain because I thought that's what a good wife was supposed to do. But now, I understand. No one has the right to ask you to trade your health, your dignity, or your self-worth just to keep a seat at their dinner table." I pulled a small handwritten note from my coat pocket. It read, "Family isn't the place where you get drained. Family is where you choose to begin again." I looked at Harper and smiled. I choose myself as family first. Addison's story is a powerful reminder that kindness should never mean silent endurance. In today's world, far too many women are expected to sacrifice quietly, even when their health and dignity are dismissed. But like Addison, anyone has the right to draw boundaries, rise, and reclaim their life. Self-respect isn't selfish. It's essential for a life that's healthy, free, and truly meaningful. And it's never too late to begin again. What do you think of Addison's decision? What would you do in her place? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, powerful stories about family and life.